I never thought I would tell this story, but here I am. I'm currently 27 years old, and live alone in a decent-sized apartment. I spend most of my time playing video games with my friends online, and don't really have anyone in the real life that I hang out with, besides family every now and then. But honestly, I prefer being alone. It's easier that way. I've lived like this for a very long time. Sure, it gets lonely at times, but my buds online always have my back. Anyways, this story starts 3 weeks ago. I just started my 3-day weekend and had my night planned out. Me and my friend Cody would play some Overwatch while I stream on Twitch. Now, I don't get a lot of viewers when I stream, but I have a steady amount in my regulars that come in. Things were pretty normal for a while we were in a pretty heavy gaming sesh, and this person joined that chat. She called me by my real name in chat, and not just my first name, but my last one as well. I was honestly confused as hell because I haven't told anyone online my real name ever, not even my closest friends. Now this random person joins is trying to dox me. I just laughed it off at first, to not give away that it was me. But then I got a friend request from the same username from the stream. Now at this point I was really freaking out, because my Steam name is different from that I use on Twitch, and the message again said my first and last name. I messaged them back saying, "Hello, do I know you?" And what they wrote back scared the fucking shit out of me. "Hey John, it's Amanda. I don't know if you remember me, but we used to date back in high school." Now, I did in fact remember who she was, all too well. Amanda was this crazy psycho girl that I dated for all of 2 weeks, but she didn't take the breakup so well. I broke it off so soon because how crazy she was. I would wake up in the morning to take my bus to school, and she was outside of my house already waiting for me. Keep in mind, I would head out to the bus stop at around 5 a.m., because I was the first pickup point, and she lived a good 45-minute walk away from my house. And she would also skip class to join me during my lunch period. It was just too crazy. So yeah, that was Amanda. I wrote back saying, "Sorry, I don't remember. I think you have the wrong person." Then she writes back my full address, down, even describing the doormat I had outside. Now, I was shitting bricks. I'm a pretty good sized guy, and I'm not saying that I would beat the shit out of a woman, but still. I had moved to a different state already since high school, and haven't talked to anyone from back then in over 10 years. I ran to my window and peeked out. I couldn't see anyone outside my door or the surrounding area. It was around 11 p.m. already as well, so it was fairly dark outside. As soon as I went back to my desk to check the message again, there was a knock at my door. Now, there was no reason someone should be at my house at 11 p.m., and my first thought was, this crazy bitch is actually here. I checked the peephole and didn't see anyone. Went back to the window to get a better view, and still nobody there. I went ahead and opened the door, and there was a package there. It didn't have an address label or anything written on it, just a small box. I took it inside and decided to open it up. It had some standard bubble wrap covering something up. After taking off all the wrapping there, sat the box and a single key, with a note that said, "When you're ready, I'll be waiting." I decided that enough was enough and decided to contact the local authorities and give them the information I had, and describing who this girl was. Their response was disappointing to say the least. The operator said on the phone, "Sir, there's not much we can do unless the person of interest is at the location, and to call back if things escalate." Well, things seemed to die down after that. I didn't get any more messages for about a week, but I did have that feeling of being watched from time to time when I would leave my apartment. I had told a few of my online buddies about the situation, and they were all equally in shock. One of them actually lived a few cities over and offered to come over, but I told him I was okay. Looking back, I probably should have accepted his offer, because a little bit after that, again another knock at 11 p.m. And once again I looked at the peephole and saw someone walking away. They had a hoodie on and there was not much light, so I couldn't make out any details. other than they appeared to be the same height as I remembered Amanda being. I didn't answer the door or open it this time. I called the police and told them about the last call, and that if anyone could come check out the apartment before the person left. This time they did in fact send out a cruiser. After some time, there was another knock on my door, this time much harder, followed by, "Hello, this is Officer Bronson." I opened the door and there standing in front of me was two officers and someone behind them. Officer Bronson said that they did find this person standing outside my apartment, hiding in a bush. And when they asked me if I could identify them, I said sure. We made eye contact and I was met with those same crazy eyes from years before. To make a long story short, it was actually Amanda. And after they searched her, they found a knife and a gun on her. And come to find out, Amanda had gone to prison a few months after high school for attempting to kill one of her last boyfriends, and had a string of restraining orders against her from multiple ex-boyfriends. She did end up going back to prison for breaking her probation and being in possession of an unregistered firearm. I'm currently in the process of moving now, but due to the quarantine and work being slower, I don't make the same pay as I used to. I'm not sure if I can afford to move out now, but I'm writing this today for my own records. And if nobody hears from me in a few months when Amanda is out again, they'll know why. This happened when both me and my friend Jay were 15. I was spending the night at his house, as I often did. It was a normal enough night. We watched movies, played a couple video games, and stayed up way too late. It was about 2 a.m. I think when we heard a loud banging coming from the front door. Luckily, at that time we were in his kitchen, at the back of the house, so no one could see us. We were spooked because there shouldn't have been anyone at the door at this hour, but we figured it was just some drunk person, and they'd go away soon enough. After 30 seconds, there was more banging at the door, and yelling that neither of us could understand. It sounded like an adult man, and he sounded angry, so we were both pretty scared. He texted his mom, who we thought was upstairs, but she said that she had left for a bit before without saying anything. She did that often enough. She liked to go with her friends to their houses in the middle of the night, so we didn't pay any attention or notice when she left. We didn't know what to do, as we were scared to call the police based off past experiences with cops in our small town, being not the best. At this point, we turned off the kitchen light, and we ducked down to the ground. We heard the banging and yelling getting louder, and I decided to see who it was, if it was anyone we knew. I army crawled through the dining room, which was also dark, and peeked through the door to the living room, which is where the front door was. There's also a huge window by the door that you can see right into the dining room through, so I was very careful not to be seen. I couldn't see any details of the man, but he looked to be about 6 feet tall and had gray hair. I crawled back to Jay and we quietly decided what to do. We heard the knocking stop, so we decided to wait a bit before seeing if it was safe. We also decided that going under the table in the dining room in case he tried to come back around, which is where the kitchen was. After about 10 minutes of silence, we rock, paper, scissored for who had the check if he was there, and of course I lost. So I again army crawled to the dining room door. I saw the man standing there through the window, hands cupped against the glass. I made eye contact with him the moment he saw me, and I said loudly, "Shit," causing my friend to panic and crawl behind me. I saw him pull out his phone. He told me later that he was texting his mom to come and save us. The man started yelling again, and this time we could make out a bit more what he said. It was mostly cussing, although I definitely heard the phrase, "I'm gonna kill you," in there a couple of times. I quickly looked past the man to see if any of the neighbors seemed to notice him, but no luck. I crawled back out of his sight again to discuss what to do with my friend. We decided to go into the basement for safety, which you can get to by moving the fridge. Confusing house, I know, but it was really old and not meant for the modern sized appliances. We pull out the fridge to get into the basement, feeling mostly safe but still terrified. I start having a panic attack, although I'm trying to hold it together best as I can for Jay, who is also on the verge of a panic attack. We hear a gunshot and shattering glass from above us. I cover my mouth so I don't scream. Jay and I look at each other, terrified. We hear loud footsteps and yelling above us, the man asking where we went. I hear him going upstairs and run around there for a bit. He eventually comes back down and starts turning over furniture, I'm assuming to find us. After what felt like hours but was probably only minutes, Jay's mom pulls into the driveway, which scares the guy as he runs out the back door in the kitchen. Jay and I get out of the basement and run to greet his mom, never happier to see her. She was shocked by the state of the house and hugged us, happy that we were safe and scared by how close we were to getting hurt. We were all scared after that. After that night, they had a better security installed, and we went over safety protocol if anything ever happened again. Luckily, it hasn't happened again yet, although when I go to his house, I'm still scared. We never called the police because we know there's not much they could even do. Just cleaned up and moved on. This experience took place back in the early 90s, so either 1990 or 91, but no later than 1992. My dad was active duty in the military, and had just been reassigned to a new job in the States. For anonymity's sake, I will only say that it was in the Midwest United States. We were moved to the States from Europe. We didn't know anybody, so we had to lease an apartment for a while. My mom didn't work, and my dad was barely adjusting to his new job, so we couldn't afford a house yet, I guess. I described the apartment building as creepy. It was tall, singular 4-story building standing literally in the middle of nowhere, surrounded by woods. The nearest path back to civilization was half a mile to the main road. If you've ever seen the Blair Witch Project, the area itself wasn't unlike the house at the end of the movie. The condition of the actual apartment wasn't much better. As a kid, I distinctly remember hating the drive to and from the apartment. Not so much from, but definitely to. The drive itself was long, boring, and uneventful. However, when approaching the place, I'd always be overwhelmed with a foreboding sense of dread, like a tingling sensation that lasted until I entered my flat. Night trips were the worst for it. Sometimes we dine out or see a later showing and drive back later in the night. It always seemed like the clouds were out in the ominous, almost demonic shape at night, and the building looked completely skeletal. Had we not been residents ourselves, I'd probably assume it was abandoned. My first encounter with Jonathan was on the weekend, early Saturday, I believe. However, my first time hearing about him was Monday morning, just before my mom took me to the bus. The landlady/manager was standing in the hallway, having a loud argument with another woman, who stood in her doorway. I was very young at the time, like barely starting kindergarten, so some of the details might be off. The woman had said something to the landlord to the effect of, "Well, if you're not going to do something about him, then I'm leaving." It was actually more of a shout. The landlady had replied with something like, "It's under control. Go back inside." And the woman yelled back in response, almost hysterically. I remember this part vividly because it was the first time hearing the F word. "It's not under fucking control. Every time I go down there." She hesitated and stopped when she noticed us walking by. We'll talk later, I guess." Then, just like that, she went back into her flat/individual apartment. Mom and I smiled as we walked by the landlady, who I don't recall ever bothering me, but I do remember her looking like a generic witch, minus the green skin and pointy hat. She was old, like in her 60s or 70s, wore a windbreaker and sweatpants, and always had a cigarette either dangling from her lip or between her fingers, about to be smoked. My mom smoked at the time, so she would often see her out in the courtyard or front garden area smoking. Another important detail about the building was that despite it being 4 floors, there were exits on every floor that went to an enclosed metal stairwell that led outside. Theoretically, you could to every floor in the building from that one stairway, including the basement, which I remember scaring me very badly as a child. I had also noticed a man who I described looking like a typical hillbilly frequently enter and exit the basement via the stairwell overlook. He was Jonathan, who was either the landlord's son, nephew, or some other relative. I don't know for a fact that they were actually related, but I'm fairly certain that they were. Jonathan lived in a small studio room built down in the basement, and apparently had done some time. He supposedly did repairs around the building and other odd jobs that the landlady was too old to do herself. She, by the way, had lived up in the attic/loft converted into a 5th floor studio, and despite supposedly being his relative, lived by herself. I distinctly remember the reasoning being that she simply did not want him living with her. My dad would always joke that she looked like an old bat, coming and going from the belfry. Days after school were spent either watching TV with my parents or exploring the small play area in the back of the building. There were no kids in the building, save for me. We really were cut off from society out in the woods. I remember there being this small alley/sidewalk that you could take that would eventually bring you to a suburb. Some of the older kids liked to come out and play baseball near the building. I had befriended some of them, and they would occasionally invite me to play ball. Usually I would just watch the older kids play, while I built sandcastles in the play school sandbox by the building. Whenever Jonathan would make a rare appearance outside, the older kids would drop what they're doing and head for the hills, so to speak, and would often encourage me to follow suit, despite me living there. I never could find out why, and my young mind had just figured it was older kids not wanting to look uncool around an adult. Now, the weekend in question, where I had officially met Jonathan, I was riding my new bike my dad had picked up for me from the department store near base. Since I was still small and not at all experienced with riding an actual bike, it still had the training wheels on. I was practicing by myself on the sidewalk in front of the building, while my parents were doing whatever. In retrospect, they probably should have kept a better eye on me. I was riding in circles and stopped when I noticed Jonathan standing by the building entrance, just watching me. This was obviously creeper behavior, but as a kid, I had figured that he was being a careful adult and making sure that I wasn't misbehaving or getting hurt. When he approached me, I stopped in my tracks. He placed his hands on my handlebars. "Nice bike there," he said in a very childlike, almost slurred voice. "Thanks, it's new," I replied, happy that someone was complimenting my new bike. "I have a bike like it too. Want to see it?" he asked, again in a very childlike manner. "Okay," I replied. What seemed like ages, but was really only 2 or 3 minutes, Jonathan came back from around the building, riding on what I can only describe as an adult tricycle. Not like one of those large bicycles that people would ride in the early 90s, but literally a giant tricycle. I was woed, because it had only been a short time since I had been weaned off my trike. I still remember being somewhat miffed that I was being forced to hand it down to my baby cousin before the move to the States. "Want to ride it?" he asked. "I'd love to," I remember saying or thinking, and actually climbing onto it to ride it, but finding that my feet barely reached the pedals. Jonathan had laughed this weird, almost girlish laugh, because apparently this was funny to him. I was uneasy at this point and wanted off, but I remember suddenly being scared of the height distance. I was a dumb kid and didn't know it was only a few inches off the ground. I was afraid of falling off. Jonathan kept laughing that creepy girly laugh, and I honestly wasn't in the mood for laughing. I was having a horrible time and wanted off, and I remember frantically asking him to help me get down from the tricycle. He obliged, walked over, placed 2 hands on my sides and lifted me up and placed me back on the ground. "Thanks!" I exclaimed before taking my bike and hauling ass back into the building. That was my first confirmed creepy experience with Jonathan, and I remember seeing over my shoulder that he stood motionless, watching me as I ran away. I was much too young to know of or even understand what a handicapped or mentally challenged person was, and my mom told me later that Jonathan was mentally impaired. I remember the next morning it was Sunday, because I think that Super Mario Bros. Cartoon came on, or it was a repeat or whatever. Anyways, I remember eating a bowl of honeycomb cereal and rushing to go outside to play, but my dad had literally stopped me by grabbing me, hoisting me up and bringing me back into the apartment. I was upset because it was an unusually sunny and nice day in October, and I wanted to enjoy it before it got dark out again. My dad had some work to do in town, and a workmate's house I think, while my mom was taking our laundry to the 24-hour wash and dry everything. I was to go with her. The building wasn't rigged with individual washer/dryer units, and didn't even have a laundry room. In fact, the only unit in the existence was down in the basement, near Jonathan's room. But I never recall us ever going down there, just that the red exit sign above the darkened basement door looked foreboding, and had always scared me. On the drive out of the complex, I did notice the landlady and the hysterical neighbor woman out front, standing by what looked to be a sheet, which at the time I didn't know what it was. A Halloween prop? But now I know that it was a dead dog laying beneath it. There had been dead animals cropping up all over the property. While many of them had been strays or wild animals, some of them did belong to the tenants. The next day I had seen a white moving truck parked out in the parking lot, and the hysterical woman was completely gone from the building by the day after. Can an entire building itself be the subject of a let's not meet? Jonathan and the landlady were creepy for sure, but the building itself is what scared me the most. I would have recurring dreams about waking up to being surrounded by darkness, and only illumination being a red exit sign, the very sign in the basement, which would always result in me waking up crying and screaming, and my parents rushing in with the lights on to see what was wrong. This series of night terrors became commonplace up until the day we moved out, which fortunately was only a few weeks later. My dad had apparently broken his lease to get us out early, because he had found an ideal house for us to rent in a nice suburb that was close to my school, a park, neighbors, and civilization. Basically, it was heaven compared to where we were living. The landlady was pissed, and she had charged my dad a $50 fee on top of the next month's rent for breaking the lease. But that didn't matter, we were gone. I never did learn for sure whether the dead animals were Jonathan's doing, because it could have easily been the result of a wild animal attack, or some dickhead hunters playing around with a rifle. We didn't exactly live out in the country, but it wasn't unheard of to get reports of bears, mountain lions, or other predatory animals coming down from the hills and deeper woods to prey on the domesticated animals. However, the neighbor woman who had been arguing with the landlady seemed extremely distraught when we had caught her swearing. Her eyes were red, as though she'd been crying that day. I saw them standing by what I believed to be a dead dog under a sheet. She looked like she had absolutely lost it. 100-yard stare and looked motionless at the sheet while the landlady puffed away at a cigarette and called who I assumed was animal control on her cordless house phone. Jonathan was very weird and obviously creepy, even though I was not harmed by him or even had that many encounters with him. I knew from the reactions of the older boys and my own feelings of discomfort that something was wrong. I don't think it's a stretch to assume that the instances with the dead animals and Jonathan were connected, and that is what the neighbor woman was upset about. She had known Jonathan was doing bad, and for whatever reason, his landlady/relative was keen to just shut the conversation down. When I had turned 10, so a few years later, I had learned from my mom that Jonathan had been apparently paying kids around the area Pogs, their type of popular collectible from the 90s, in order to go with him to the work shed to play doctor. This lines up perfectly with the reactions of the older kids, the woman neighbor who ultimately moved, and my own sinking suspicions. I know I had said that it was the building itself that creeped me out the most. However, I think my youthful ignorance, naive and general assumption that everyone was well-meaning, had misplaced my fears to the building, and blinded me to the fact that Jonathan was actually the source of my discomfort. I'm not aware that he ever actually did anything to those kids, but let's just hope for their sake that he didn't, and hopefully finally receive proper diagnosis and treatment for his condition. For context, I'm 5'3", 24-year-old female, and working as a programmer for an IT company in the Philippines. Now, the area where my office is comprised of 3 buildings. Building A, where my office is in, Building B, and Building C. To get to the other buildings, it would take you like 10 minutes to get there. Important for later. This happened to me a year ago, around the end of February until March. I just got out of a bad breakup at the time, and I really intended to just focus on myself and not meet anyone yet. I just got out of work and it's around 7 p.m. on a Friday night. I went to my usual waiting spot, which has benches and is located on the back of our building, near the entrance of an underground parking. For a company shuttle, and Omar, shuttle dispatcher, is there. Now, I've known Omar for 2 years, and is someone I consider now a friend, and we would often chat about our lives, even the breakup with my ex then, and joke around. He's a 40-plus-year-old guy, and he gives out this big fatherly vibe, so he's really someone that I trust. That night, he was there and with someone new that I didn't recognize. Our conversation went like this. Omar: "Oh, hi, OP. Good thing you're here. I'd like you to meet someone since he told me he really wants to meet you for a long time now." And then the guy stood up and shook my hand. I greeted him, and just to be polite, and this new guy, let's name him Ray. He's average looking and a little shorter to my height, 5'1" maybe, and he instinctively gave off a vibe as soon as I shook his hand. I thought that would be the end of it, but he proceeded to talk to me for a few minutes while I waited for my shuttle to arrive. Omar has purposely left me and this Ray guy so that we could talk and get to know each other. I'm actually quite puzzled at this cause, 1, I have no clue who this guy is, and why he would be so eager to meet me. And 2, I clearly told Omar before that I'm not into meeting anyone just yet. But for the sake of being polite and nice, I talked to Ray, but we never reached any personal questions, exchanging numbers, social media accounts, or even telling him my full name. I just told him my nickname, and left it just like that, when I finally got to the shuttle. Fast forward a week, and Friday again. I got off of work at the same time, and surprise, surprise, Ray's there again with Omar, and a security guard. They were chatting, but as soon as I came, Ray instantly greeted me at this point. I'm a little creeped out, as I expected our encounter would only be a one-time thing. I just said hi, and brushed him off and sat on the bench to wait for my shuttle again. And of course, this guy doesn't seem to know my definition of personal space. Sat beside me and started to talk to me again, but this time he asked me for my cell phone number. I told him off and clearly said that I'm not giving out my number to strangers, and just giving him one-word answers, just to give an impression that I wasn't interested at all. He would ask, "Why wouldn't you give your number? I just want to be friends." And I could see in his face that he was getting frustrated every time I told him I wasn't giving it to him. This happened while Omar and the security guard were looking at us from afar, but this went on until I got on the shuttle again. As soon as I got home, I mindlessly scrolled through my timeline and saw a notification that I have a new friend request. And guess what? It's Ray. And he even messaged me with a "please accept my friend request." I just deleted his request, but now I'm pretty shocked since I didn't tell him my Facebook account. So how did he manage to find me? The following day was the last straw, when I decided to get off at an earlier time, so that I could avoid him, but to my surprise, he was there, again, waiting for me, along with Omar, the security guard. Ray immediately runs up to me to say hi, but I brushed him off and dreaded the fact that I would have to wait for this creep again when I saw my shuttle isn't there yet. He immediately asked me if I accepted his Facebook request, and I decided to play dumb and said I haven't been active on Facebook, and I haven't seen any request. He got disappointed and fiddled with his phone for a bit, and then revealed his phone to show my Facebook profile, and asked me if this was me. I said yes, and this time I was completely ignoring him at this point, and playing with my phone, and told him that I wasn't going to accept his request because I don't know him. And then Ray grabbed my phone out of my hands, angrily, and said that he was going to add himself, using my Facebook account if I won't. I muttered a "what in the actual fuck?" grabbed my phone from him with perfect timing. I got on the shuttle in a hurry and told the driver to go. At this point, I could confirm that this guy was stalking me, and now knows my daily schedule and social media accounts. I reported this incident to my manager, and told her how this was already happening for some time now. She was surprised I didn't report it earlier, but I blamed it on my lack of assertiveness and fear that I must have overreacted to his advances. We reported the incident to the office security, and told them what had happened, and they couldn't do anything at first as, 1, I need actual evidence about my allegations to him, and 2, I only knew Ray by his first name. They would need more information than that. I didn't bother to ask where he's from or if he even was working in our office building, which is dumb of me, and I should have asked him in the first place. My manager then decided that I should be at least accompanied by some of the office mates to confirm the situation, and the guys volunteered to accompany me every time I got off of work. They accompanied me for a few days, but no matter what time I got out, Ray was there to harass me. I felt bad for my office mates as they had to deal with his bullshit as well. First instance, when he saw I was with my office mates, I could see the visible anger in his eyes, and he would try to butt our conversations, even if we're ignoring him. At one point when I'm talking with my office mates, he let out an exasperated sigh and said, "OP, can I talk to you for a second, please?" "What do you want?" "I just want to talk to you. If you don't, I'll leave." Okay then. I went back to talking to my office mates. He butted in once more and asked that if I should introduce him to my office mates when I didn't. He proceeded to introduce himself instead, which irked the hell out of my office mates, and as his behavior didn't seem normal at all. After that incident, my office mates and I told my manager what had happened and how dangerous this guy might be. She decided that we should escalate to HR and have them deal with it immediately. Gladly, HR responded and took the situation seriously, and began to do an investigation on who Ray might be. Same day, they sent an email that after searching through records, turns out Ray wasn't an employee of our office, and they might need to talk to building security to find out more about this guy. HR also requested our office security to escort me and observe the situation. I honestly felt relieved, as now I feel safe for the time being, while they search who Ray might be. He still showed up even though I got out late, or earlier than usual, but never went near me when he saw I was accompanied by security, but he would just keep his distance and stare at me, smile creepily, and linger outside my shuttle until I left. HR contacted me for a meeting with them and with my manager about some news on Ray. I was shocked by the information that they found out. Ray was not an employee of our building/office, but in fact, a temp in the security office in Building C. I then thought, okay, this creep is really putting an effort for someone who is clearly not interested, and if he's a temp, meaning there's a chance I won't be able to see him after this. But then, what HR said chilled me to the bone. He was a temp assigned to work on the security cameras, meaning he had access to all the building cameras. It has been his way to spy on me, and the reason why he's able to be there at the exact time I got out. HR has already spoken to his supervisor and gave a warning to Ray, and of course, Ray denied the allegations, even if I had witnesses against him. The supervisor wanted to apologize to me in person, but I decided not, as I wanted this to be over with. After that meeting, I never saw Ray again, and I reckon he must have been kicked out after HR issued warnings against him. As for Omar, I never see him as well, and I felt bad. He was also part of the people who enabled Ray, and didn't do shit when I was clearly getting harassed. I received a bit of backlash from the security guards in the building for a while as well, hearing them say that I was overreacting, and I should have accepted his advances, which was disgusting, as I heard the same thing being said by female building staff as well. Nothing strange happened for a few days, but then the security guards, that was with Omar at the time, when Ray was harassing me, added me on Facebook, but I didn't make much of it and just deleted the request. I'm still working in the same office building as of today, and been totally shaken up by the incident, that I decided to just keep my distance from people, so I could avoid this from ever happening again. And to Ray, no means no, and let's not meet again. Hey friends, thanks for watching the video. If you have any suggestions for the next video, I'd love to see them in the comments down below. Also, don't forget the bell icon and hit all notifications to get notified when I drop a new video or stream. And if you'd like to get early access to my videos before anyone else, please consider supporting me on Patreon, where you get that and some other fun perks for just $1 a month. And I have my podcast now available, with past videos that can be found in all major podcast services. Also, I have some merch available on Spreadshirt. All links to these and all my social medias will be in the description field down below. And remember to lock your doors, you never know who may visit.